You ready to read, buddy? We're going to start with the introduction, okay? Okay? Okay. The Tao Te Ching is not only the most influential classic text of Chinese philosophy, it is also one of the most widely read examples of what can perhaps best be described as wisdom literature. According to tradition, the Tao Te Ching was written in the 6th century BC by the Taoist sage Lao Tzu, a contemporary of Confucius, Keong Fu 551 to 479 BC. However, analysis of the text's vocabulary and style suggests a date sometime in the late 4th or early 3rd century BC. Several ancient versions of the Chinese text exist, but the oldest extant version was discovered in 1993 in a tomb near the town of Guodian in Hubei province, written on numerous slips of bamboo, a common writing material in ancient China. This text has been dated prior to 300 BC, very long time ago. Initially, the text was known simply as the Lao Tzu, but during the Han period, 1st century BC to 1st century AD, it became more widely known under its present name of the Tao Te Ching, a title that derives from the traditional division of the book's 81 short chapters into two sections. The first section, chapters 1 to 37, opens with an explanation of the enigmatic nature of the Tao, literally the way, while the second chapters, 38 to 81, opens with an explanation of the workings of the Te, virtue, power, quality, or the good. The third word, namely Qing, means classic, and so Tao Te Ching can be translated as the classic the classic of the way and its power or virtue. It's beautiful artwork. Although the Tao Te Ching is of primary importance for the Taoist school of Chinese philosophy as well as the Taoist religion and Chinese Buddhism, its translation into hundreds of languages has made it available to the worldwide audience. The original text comprised around 5,000 Chinese characters, some of which have multiple meanings. It was also written in a cryptic style. If we add to this the differences between Chinese and Western thought and the passage of time between the writings of the original text and present day, we can begin to appreciate the difficulties faced by translators in their efforts to provide an effective translation of the Tao Te Ching that is accessible to a modern Western audience. In spite of these difficulties, over 40 translations exist in print in English alone, plus 30 or more online. However, a simple side by side comparison of two or more translations will reveal the wide ranging differences in interpretation adopted by individual translators. But this is hardly surprising in view of the enigmatic nature of the Tao itself and the ambiguous style of the Tao Te Ching. Wipe your mouth. John H. MacDonald, the author of the translation presented here, consulted a number of different versions of the text in an attempt to find a consensus between them and produce a definitive translation of this ancient Chinese classic. Most translations refer to the sage or master as being exclusively masculine in gender. But MacDonald chose the feminine because a master is aware of both, but chooses the least likely of the two. As the following verse shows, know the masculine, but keep to the feminine, and become a watershed to the world. Chapter 28. Let's take a pause and check on baby toes over here. Let's go. Lao Tzu. The little we know about Lao Tzu comes from the Shiqi, records of the historian, compiled towards the beginnings of the 1st century BC by the Han historian Su Ma Qian, 145 to 85 BC. The name Lao Tzu is actually an honorific title meaning old master. According to Su Ma Qian, his given name was Li Tan. Bless you, honey. Born in the village of Juchen in the state of Chiu, in later life he became an archivist at the court of the Chu dynasty. Su Ma Qian also recounts two events from Lao Tzu's life. The first of these was a visit by Confucius, who asked Lao Tzu to tutor him in the traditional rites. Let's take a break. The first of these was a visit by Confucius, who asked Lao Tzu to tutor him in the traditional rites. Lao Tzu replied in words that express some of the central themes of the Tao Te Ching, saying, "Those you talk about have turned to dust. All that remains is their words. When a nobleman lives in good times, he goes to court in a carriage. But when times are hard, he goes where the wind blows." Some people say that a wise merchant hides his wealth and thus appears to be poor. Likewise, the sage, if he has great inner virtue, he appears outwardly to be a fool. Stop being so arrogant with all your questions, your self-importance, and your overbearing obsessions. None of this is the real you. That is all I have to say to you. When Confucius rejoined his followers, he described his meeting with Lao Tzu thus: I know that birds fly, fish swim, and animals run. Creatures that run can be trapped. Those that swim can be caught in nets. Those that fly can be shot down. But what to do with the dragon, I do not know. It rides on the clouds and the wind. Today I met Lao Tzu, and he is like a dragon. The second event related by Su Ma Qian is the final journey of Lao Tzu. Despairing at the moral decline of the kingdom and people's obsessive desire for possessions and status, Lao Tzu set off on a water buffalo to travel to the west. According to some traditions, he was withdrawing from the world to become a hermit. But the story takes on a slightly different meaning when we consider that in Chinese mythology, the West is the land of the afterlife. When he reached the western gate of the kingdom in the mountains pass at Hangqiu, he was recognized as a sage by Kuan Yin, the keeper of the pass, who asked Lao Tzu to write down his knowledge of the Tao before retiring from the world. Lao Tzu duly obliged and, according to tradition, wrote the book in one night. The next day, the sage presented the book to Kuan Yin, saying, "This book is no different from other books, in that it is a dead thing, but you can bring it to life if you put into practice what is written in it." With that, Lao Tzu mounted his water buffalo and departed for the west, never to be seen again. Whether or not a single individual known as Lao Tzu, the Old Master, was the author of the Tao Te Ching is now openly questioned by many scholars, as is his historical existence. Instead, it is suggested that the text is more in the nature of an anthology of sayings compiled over an extended period of time before taking its present form. What is beyond question, however, is the profound nature of the universal wisdom contained in this seminal work on the Tao. The Tao Te Ching, the Tao Te Ching, okay. The Tao Te Ching is essentially about the Tao, but a number of related themes recur throughout the text. The most significant of these are the sage or the master, rulers and government, and non action, Wu Wei. The Tao, the Chinese word Tao, is the Tao. The Chinese word Tao is generally translated as the way, the implication being that it refers to a spiritual way or path. It also has a much wider, more enigmatic meaning than this, as indicated by the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be spoken is not the eternal name. The Tao Te Ching goes on to tell us that the Tao is not only older than the concept of God, it is both intangible and evasive, and therefore beyond all concepts. It may be regarded as the mother of the universe, for it alone nourishes and completes all things. The Tao has always existed and is even beyond existing and not existing, from which we can infer that the Tao denotes an ultimate way, the way of absolute reality, i.e., reality purely and simply as it is, unadulterated by our concepts and opinions. Yet, when the Tao is looked at, there is nothing for people to see. When listened for, there is nothing for them to hear. Moreover, the world cannot understand it, since the Tao lies beyond the grasp of our normal understanding, or, as the Tao Te Ching tells us, elsewhere. Our basic understandings are not from the Tao, because they come from the depths of our misunderstanding. If we wish to increase our capacity for understanding and thereby draw closer to the Tao, we are advised to change our way of thinking because the more knowledge you seek, the less you will understand. We are encouraged to follow the example of the master who learns by unlearning. Thus, she is able to understand all things. The sage or master. The sage or master is one who, having become unlearned by emptying him or herself of all concepts and opinions, is filled with the Tao and is like a newborn child. Having attained unity with the Tao, the master no longer has a self. That is to say, he or she has attained a state of consciousness which is very different from the state we normally experience because the master has no mind of her own. His or her consciousness is as one with the Tao, which is itself without wants and desires. And so the master is no longer governed by the whims and desires of the ego, freed from desire, and can see the hidden mystery. By having desire, you can only see what is visibly real. As the master freely admits, I am different from ordinary people. I nurse from the great mother Tao's breast. Once we have found the mother, we begin to know what her children should be. When we know what when we know we are the mother's child, we begin to guard the qualities of the mother in us. Because the master is filled with the qualities of virtues, sorry. When because the master is filled with the qualities, one second. Because the master is filled with qualities or virtues of the Tao, we find the Tao Te Ching employing similar expressions for both. For example, the Tao is likened to the uncarved block, while the master, whose union with the Tao has brought about his or her completion, is whole as an uncarved block of wood. The Tao never acts with force. Likewise, the master shuns the use of violence. The Tao does not compete, and the Tao of the wise person acts by not competing. Rulers and government. The historian Sima Qian relates Lao Tzu's departure for the West during a period of moral decline. As we have seen, however, Sima Qian's traditional 6th century BC, dating for the writing of the. What's the matter, Papa? Rulers and government. The historian Sima Qian relates Lao Tzu's departure for the West during a period of moral decline. As we have seen, however, Sima Qian's traditional 6th century BC, dating for the writing of the Tao Te Ching, differs from the scholastic view, which places it much later, in the late 4th or early 3rd century BC. During the aptly named Warring States period, 480 to 222 BC, a period when regional warlords sought to annex smaller states in the declining years of the Chu dynasty. Significantly, both datings point to the Tao Te Ching having been written during a time of moral and political decline, a fitting context for the guidance it offers to those who rule or govern. According to the Tao Te Ching, the best leaders are those the people hardly know exist. They become servants of their people, for only he who is the lowest servant of the kingdom is worthy of becoming its ruler. Good government is unobstructive and thus enables the people to become whole. It doesn't interfere with the people unnecessarily. Governing a large country is like frying small fish. Too much poking spoils the meat. Wise rulers are those who follow the way of the Tao. For if a ruler abides by its principles, then her people will willingly follow. Non action or Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching tells us that true sayings seem contradictory, and there are possibly few sayings more contradictory than those relating to the principle of non action or Wu Wei. For example, we are advised to act by not acting, do by not doing. And we are told that the master accomplishes much without doing anything. In mastering the ego or self, rather than allowing it to master him, her, the master is freed from the need to act out of personal desire or self interest, and thus becomes an empty vehicle for the Tao. In this liberated state of being rather than doing, the master enjoys the ultimate freedom, the freedom of no choice, because he does nothing. It is the Tao which accomplishes things through him. For those who practice not doing, everything will fall into place. The Tao Te Ching was written 2,500 years ago. In many respects, the world is now a very different place, thanks to advances in science and technology, transport and communication, and the emergence of the global economy. Yet in others, yet in others, the world is much the same as it was in the warring states period, for we are still fighting wars, still thirsting after power and status, and still obsessed with the acquisition of wealth and possessions. In that respect, the timeless wisdom that lies at the heart of the Tao Te Ching is just as relevant today as it was 2,500 years ago. Embrace simplicity, put others first, desire little. Without opening your door, you can know the whole world. Without looking out of your window, you can understand the way of the Tao. John Baldock. And that, my friends, concludes the introduction of the Tao Te Ching. I will start to read some pages out of here as we go on, but I will make those some shorts. Thank you for watching.